And now we're going to do our system layout. And so again, we talked about our holes being on the center line. And so what we want to do is we want to mark out our center line for all those fasteners. So this is the line where the fasteners will actually go into the structure.
Perfect.
So 1 3/8 is the magic number. So 1 3/8 from the exterior sheathing. And then basically we're going to make sure that we are into sufficient material on the bottom and into proper material on the top, which is the beam.
Yep.
So I'm going to start, I'm going to measure 1 3/8. I'm going to hook onto the exterior sheathing, and I'm going to mark 1 3/8 on the bottom surface, and I'm going to mark 1 3/8 on the bottom of the wall.
Okay.
I'm going to do that on both sides.
So in this case, sheathing and this aluminum bar that we have are flush.
Correct.
If your step down to exterior is protruding or inset, you still go from the sheathing, not from the step down.
Correct, unless your step down is inside your sheathing.
Okay.
And so that's the only problem, is because we're measuring 1 3/8 off that exterior sheathing.
Right.
And so if this step down is inside, you're not going to have enough material to go into.
To drill down into.
So typically what we'll do is we'll start at 1 3/8, check for proper material, and if required, we can always move that system towards the interior.
Perfect.
We never want to move it out farther.
Okay.
So 1 3/8 is always the minimum, and then we can increase that and come to the interior. So again, I'm going to mark my 1 3/8
on the bottom and on the side.
All right. So I have my lower surface marks.
Yep.
And because we know we're sitting square plumb level, I know that at 1 3/8 in from the exterior sheathing, what's going to happen is I'm going to land in the center of the first ply of beam. So whether that's 2x, so it's a 2x10, a 2x12, or if it's a glue lam or LVL. If it's an LVL, I'm going to land in the center of that first 2-inch or 1 7/8 ply. If I'm going into 2x10, it's 1.5 inches, so I'm landing directly in the center of that beam.
Okay.
So we will snap this first lower line. So you can over there. And get as close to that outside wall as you can. Okay, and as we say, fingers bleeding. Good?
Yep. Okay, so we've got the bottom line chalked.
Okay.
Now this is the center line.
Correct. That is the center line. That's where all our fasteners are going to be drilled.
Okay.
So the lower line is probably the most important to make sure that you're sitting square to the opening. Again, if you had a mismeasurement on one side, your system could be sitting a little bit cockeyed in that opening. So now what we want to do is we want to transfer that line to the side surface and the upper surface of the opening.
Does it matter which we start with?
It doesn't.
Okay.
What we want to do is, instead of measuring off the sheathing for the sides and the top, because you could have a little bit of lean or the sheathing could be bowed out in a section, we want to snap our bottom line, and then we want to transfer that using the laser level.
Okay, so everything goes off of the snapped bottom line.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm going to set up my laser level here, and what I like to do is start as close to this side of the opening as I can.
Yep.
I'm going to set the laser on my snapped line over here.
Yep.
And I'm going to set it on line over there.
Now, if this is done properly, it should align with the mark that you made on the side already, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the easiest way to check your laser line is basically just drop your finger. So drop your finger over top of the red line like that, and you should be able to see how the laser line matches up with your string or your chalk line.
Perfect.
So you feel good about that?
I feel great.
Okay. And so I'm good along that entire line, and I know that these lasers will self-level.
Okay.
And so I know that now my green line all the way around, up that side and across the top of that beam is perfect with this line.
Great.
So it does line with, it hits my line down here.
Yep.
And so I'm going to transfer that to the top of the side surface.
Okay. And then we're going to need that chalk line again, yes?
Correct.
Okay.
And then I'm also going to transfer it to the upper surface. Normally what I'd like to do is put a center line. So I like to put a line on here, especially on the wider openings.
Okay.
And this is because your beam can be bowed a little bit. Sometimes when you're setting up the laser level, you're not exactly on the lines, and so this is a good way to double check when we're coming the other direction that we're aligned.
Okay.
All right. So I can see that that's perfectly on my snapped lower line. My line is off about a 1/16, so I'm just going to correct it now.
Okay.
Make sure that you know which one it is.
And then mark the corner again.
Transfer up here.
Hold on.
All right. The other reason I like the red chalk is because it shows up really nice on that black zip flashing. So that's always helpful.
Presume we should check our center line?
Yeah, so the nice thing here is you can really see that our systems, or our opening is not perfect. So just visually you can see that there is a little bit of lean in this opening. And so you're gonna see that it's a little bit bigger here. So it looks like this system is actually, this top is leaning in a little bit.
Yep.
And so that's what's great about the laser levels, is that you can really get that perfectly plumb square level in your opening, even if it's imperfect. All right, so the lower track is the first part that's always installed on our product. So we want a nice, flat, level lower track.
Okay.
The side of the track that should be towards the exterior is the side with this beveled edge on it.
Yep.
And so you can also see the weep holes.
These weep holes right here?
Yes.
It looks like there's 3, yeah.
There should be a minimum of 3 in each system.
Okay.
You're gonna have some extra hardware on the exterior side of the track. So that's our door holder hardware. You can see that there should be no hardware protruding towards the interior side of the system.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. In every extrusion where fasteners are being put in,
Yep.
you're going to have a center line in those extrusions that you can align with your now snapped line. And so that makes it really, really easy to line up these tracks and make sure that your fasteners are going into the right place.
So you can see basically that red snapped line.
Correct.
Looking down into the track.
Yep, and you can just line it up with that center line in the track, and you know that that track is running perfectly straight. You can use that snap line and that center line to straighten them out.
Okay. Now you mentioned earlier making sure you have enough meat. Is this the point where you would know that, or would you know that earlier when you had snapped your lines?
Yeah, so at minimum, you want your step down at this exterior of the lower track or outside of that.
Okay.
And so if you have less than that, really, you want 3/4 of an inch. That center line needs to be 3/4 of an inch in at minimum from that exterior step
down
to make sure that you're not chipping concrete out
Okay.
and that sort of thing.
Sounds good.
So now we know that that lower track is sitting on the line.
Yep.
Now we need to center it in the opening.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that it's got enough room on both sides for the side jambs, because
Okay.
the side jambs are actually going to sit down on either side. The minimum requirement for our side jam to fit in here is 3 1/4 inches.
Okay.
From the framed wall to the face of that plastic end cap on the track.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna butt it in here, and I'm gonna move this track over to 3 1/4, and you have 3 1/4. You're
A little bit more than 3 1/4.
a little bit more than 3 1/4.
Yep.
Right. Now that bottom track is in the right spot.
Yep.
Now we can pre-drill the bottom surface and mount that track down and get it shimmed to level. Okay, so now we know that our lower track is on the line, it's squared to the opening, and we've measured it to center it in the opening.
Yep.
So now we're going to pre-drill our holes in the lower surface.
So this is where normally an impact drill would be helpful?
This is when a concrete drill
Okay.
would, like an SDS concrete drill. If we're going into wood, any surface really, you want to pre-drill your holes to make sure that you're starting smaller and then working your way up to the appropriate size hole.
Perfect.
And so what we're going to do is I'm going to start from the hinge end.
Yep.
So this is the opening end. I'm going to start there. I'm going to ask you to hold this end and keep it on the line.
Yep.
All right, so we're all lined up. I'm going to drill my first hole.
We are.
And again, I can see that line, that chalk line, through
each
the
hole.
bottom of my track.
Yep.
And so it's really easy to line up my fastener hole directly on that line. All right, we're gonna do the second one. All right. So now we have all our holes drilled. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the track. We're gonna clean any shavings, anything out, any dust, dirt, grime, and then we're going to finish those holes in the lower surface.
Perfect.
We're gonna take this. All right, so we have now drilled all our holes to the proper depth in the lower surface.
Okay.
We've cleaned out the bottom track.
Yep.
Got all the dust and debris out. And now we have the track back onto our line with the holes aligned. So now what I typically do is I start to put my fasteners in.
Yep.
And this is just to kind of keep the track aligned.
Yep.
While I shim.
Okay.
All right, so now I'm gonna put the fasteners in.
Okay, so the fasteners we're using today are just to go into this kind of aluminum plate that we have.
Correct.
But you had mentioned normally going into concrete, so this would be where we would use those Tapcons, right?
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
So now that the fasteners are in, I want to level the track, and I'm gonna start at the hinge end.
So the fasteners are in, but they're not tightened all the way down.
Correct.
Okay.
They're just gonna hold the track in proper alignment.
Yep.
And that way we can kind of still lift the track up a little bit to slide our shims underneath.
Okay.
So typically I'd like to have at least a 1/16 of an inch underneath my lower track, just to allow, if there's water sitting underneath there, it can migrate to the outside.
Okay.
And I know that this is level all the way because I prepped my surface very well, and so I can do the same amount of shims
At each
entire
spot.
length. Correct.
Now these shims are going between our lower track and the sill pan normally, right?
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
Normally on the lower track, I'm using what's called a horseshoe shim.
Okay.
And so those come in 16th, 8-inch thickness, and 1/4 inch thickness.
Yep.
And so really those are the same width as our lower track.
Okay.
And so they hide very well, they don't protrude on either side, but they have a really good width to them so that your track isn't leaning when you're tightening them down.
So we're shimming up around each one of our fasteners.
Correct. So now, as we fasten it down, what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's sitting level across the opening, but also that there's no lean interior to exterior. So a simple way to do it is to set up your laser level, and you can just measure off the top surface. Now, the reason I don't like this is that a lot of people don't know how to hold a tape perpendicular.
Okay.
Vertical.
So it'll be
on an angle, they'll be measuring off the wrong spot, there'll be a piece of dirt in there. And so what we want is we want something that measures that height consistently. So all I do is I use any offcut of wooden 2x4. So I want to make sure that we're down nice and tight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that level line on my 2x4. And then as I go along, I can just make sure that that
hits the same
laser
spot.
line. Yes, correct.
Makes sense.
Cool.
So at this point, we've put shims in. We haven't tightened the fasteners down.
Yeah. So now we're going to go along and tighten our fasteners, and then we'll double check the level.
Perfect. The only one I would question is this one here.
Okay. Needs to go down. Track needs to go down.
Looks like it.
Give this another little shot.
Much better.
All right. Now we're going to want to check at each fastener location whether there's a lean to the interior, exterior using the torpedo level. So we're going to work our way along the track. So it's perfectly between the lines.